Welcome to this episode of the UK Sports Chat podcast. I'm Joe Williams, and in today's episode, I speak with Nick Butter. Nick is a British endurance athlete, speaker, author, and fundraiser. And Nick is the first man to have run a marathon in every country in the world, which he finished last November 2019. He has a new book coming out about this journey in November, on November the 11th, and he is currently running from north to south of Italy, completing 100 marathons in 100 days. I've caught up with him on day 35, I think. He's currently injured, and he talks about, amongst other things, his run around the world, how he got inspired to take up these challenges, and how he's going to complete this one, considering that he's got this challenge ahead of him with this injury. Enjoy. Morning, Nick.
Good morning. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Good. I'm in good spirits despite the recent slight little injury and setback, which, to be honest, I've been very lucky with those kind of things. So I can't complain.
Yeah. So go on. Tell us about your challenge that you're on at the moment and what's happened. I've been following along, so I know what you're talking about. But just describe it for us.
Yeah. So I'll give you a bit of a backstory. So the whole of this year was designed to be a speaking tour to share the story of the last journey and to hopefully inspire some kids. I do lots of schools, so I quite enjoy that side of things. And then what with COVID happening, that was all postponed initially and then cancelled, and then we just put everything back to next year, and we thought, you know what, let's just do something that's fun this year as much as we can in terms of travel and adventure, but while we can stick to the COVID rules. And so once we're out of lockdown, we said, I had all sorts of plans. We were going to be doing circumnavigating Iceland. I was going to be running north to south of Malawi, which have both been pushed back to next year as well. And instead, we thought, what can we do where we can actually get to a country that's relatively safe now? And I thought, well, it would be nice to go and do a trip that's running point to point. And part of what I hope to be in the future is to run lots of north to south of countries and circumnavigate countries and just, to be honest, just have a laugh and enjoy what I love doing, which is running. So and traveling. And so we picked Italy, and the idea was to run 100 marathons in 100 days, running north to south of Italy, so the very top of Italy, all the way down to Sicily. Have a few days in Sicily for Christmas. And nice. We are about a month and a bit in now. It's day 36 today, but 3 days ago, so I did 33 marathons in 33 days. Frankly, it was a little bit of a jolly because, I'm quite comfortable with the distance, and it was about running for. I liken it to getting up in the morning and going to work, except I'm running for 4 or 5 hours quite gently through Italy, and my girlfriend Nikki and I and our puppy Poppy live in a van, and the idea was to travel along. And a few days ago, on day 33, I was suffering with an injury, and it just got a little bit too much, and I thought it was a tendon problem in my shin. Yeah. It then transpired that it probably was shin splints, and then what I did wrong, because I'm not that experienced with injuries, to be honest, because I've got away with a lot of injuries not happening. Yeah. And I think it's just transpired now that it's some form of stress fracture in my lower shin, and so I couldn't walk. Like 2 days ago, I tried to get out. We stayed in this hotel to rest up and heal myself, and I tried to get down for breakfast in the morning, and I literally couldn't make it past the next bedroom along in the corridor. I was just in absolute agony. So I spoke to lots of physios, had some incredibly lovely people on social media message me and give me so much advice, and I just took every bit of advice. I watched hours of YouTube stuff about what I could do better. Yeah. Because I get a lot of questions about this when I have interviews, and people say, "Oh, so how do you overcome injuries?" And the honest answer is, I have no idea what to do with an injury. Everything is individual, and you don't really know what's going on. And even if you go and see specialists, they might have different opinions and all this sort of stuff. So you just have to listen to it. And so that's the long answer. But I'm running north to south of Italy, and a couple of days ago I had an injury. So the plan is to still complete the challenge, of course, because that's the whole point of endurance, just get to the finish line.
Yep.
And so I'm going to rest up for another couple of days and then hopefully try running again. And if it's still painful, if it's still causing me too much trouble, then I will stop a little bit longer. And I will make up the marathon distances by running double marathons every day towards the end of the journey when my leg is properly healed. So that's the plan.
Okay.
Let's face it, we don't know what's going to happen. This kind of injury, sometimes you're told it can take 3, 4, 5, or maybe 6 months to heal. But I've had fractures before running, and I've healed in a matter of weeks. And so we're going to give it a full week off and then run probably on Monday. That's the plan. Fingers crossed.
Okay. Cool. I love how I love how laid back you are. So your quotes there, it's a bit of a jolly. Yeah, you've just done 33 marathons in 33 days. Yeah, a bit of a jolly. And
well, I think to me, if I'm going to go and run at like 130 miles or something, then that's a brutal run. But the beauty I love about running is people always say to me, "Oh, how do you do it? How do you do it?" Well, I just run really slowly. I'll stop and have a drink every now and then. I'll have my lunch halfway through. I mean, I'm not stopping for a decent period of time. I'm only stopping for 5 minutes or so.
Yeah.
But I take it easy. I'm in this sport because I love running. I'm not in it to ruin myself, despite the injury. It's just a bit of fun.
Yeah, I love that. But you don't make it easy for yourself. I mean, like I say, I've been following along, but just describe day one of this current challenge to us.
Yeah, day one. I didn't make it easy for myself, but honestly, that wasn't by design. I had a couple of friends in Switzerland, and on our way from the UK to Italy, we stopped off and I spoke with them, and they're really good, much better runners than me. And they said, "Oh, it's going to be quite difficult to get to the most northerly point of Italy. It's a place I can't pronounce, but it's in the mountains. I knew it was in the mountains.
Yeah.
What I didn't anticipate was quite how steep and quite how far away from any main road it was going to be. So, as you saw from day one, it took me a good half a marathon just to get to that most northerly point.
Yeah.
And it was hilly. It was right out there, and I was scrambling over these huge rocks. And I got to the most northerly point, and there was it's just a sheer cliff. So I got as far as I could, and then turned around and came back. But I think in that first week we were doing 3, 4, 5,000 feet of elevation every day.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if I was sustainable or not, but I just kept going. And then we had things like Stelvio Pass, which is this beautiful mountain pass in the mountains, but it was hilly. That was a 9,000 feet climbing day in the snow, -7 in the van with ice on the inside of the windows. But we had, honestly, that's some of the best bits of the journey so far.
Yeah.
I love that misadventure. That's the whole point. If I didn't have Nikki and the van and the dog, I would probably just be running on my own and bivvy camping and that sort of stuff. And it would be far more brutal. So it's quite nice to have a bit of the balance between it being tough and then I'm currently sitting on the roof of a hotel here waiting for an injury to heal. So I feel like I'm kind of dossing at the moment versus what it was like in that first week.
I like I say, I've been following along on your Instagram feed, and that some of your day 2 pictures, the Dolomites are absolutely stunning. Some of the places you've seen.
Yeah, that's the idea. Lots of people ask me about my legacy and what I want to leave behind with this sort of stuff, and it's exactly that. I want to be able to get to my deathbed having hopefully inspired some people and done some good, but ultimately just enjoy every day. Life's too short to wish away everything, and a lot of people postpone all of their kind of hopes and dreams until their retirement, or maybe let's do that next year, or we'll save up for a few years and let's do that. And that's fine, and that's fair enough, but there are opportunities out there that you can do sooner rather than later. I had a decent job and I left it behind to do some running because it get me outside a lot. I found this horrendous stat actually that 90% of British people that British people spend 90% of their waking life indoors.
That's shocking, isn't it?
Exactly. And I mean, yes, okay, we need to be indoors to sleep because it's safe, and we need to be indoors to work sometimes. But actually, I thought, you know what, I'm going to try and change that a little bit and be outside as much as possible, because this is where the fun happens, So that's what it's all about.
Yeah, definitely. So like I say, I've followed along with some of the things you've been up to. So for those who haven't followed along before that are listening, so your prior challenge was a little bit of a big one, wasn't it?
Yeah, okay. I'll give you a bit of background of that. So, yes. So, as of November the 11th last year, I crossed the finish line of what was a 2-year journey to become the first person to run a marathon in every country in the world, and that was an undertaking. It was fantastic. It was horrendously difficult at times. It was stressful. It was tear-jerking at opportunities because there was so many places that I was visiting that I had no idea what I was getting myself into. If we rewind the clock 2 years before I even started that trip, that was when the whole thing sparked. I was running lots of different ultra marathons all over the place, and I was in the Sahara Desert running the infamous Marathon des Sables race, and I met many people will know I met this guy called Kevin Webber, who's a great runner in his own right, and he had terminal prostate cancer, and he just dropped this horrendous news on me, and he said, you know what, life's too short, you need to, and it really gave me some home truths. And at that point I was on the cusp of wanting to change my life a bit more and do something a little bit more adventurous rather than just enter races. And he was the brilliant push I needed over that cliff of adventure, and I had that conversation with him, and then a few weeks later got back and decided I wanted to do something to raise some money for the charity Prostate Cancer UK, but I also wanted to do something that was living by his teachings, which is to not wait for something horrendous to happen before you wake up and realise how lucky we are, and to follow what you want to do. And I thought, well, I love taking pictures, I love meeting people, I love travelling, I love running. Let's go and travel and try and work out a way in which we can do this epic trip. And I realised, I was so surprised actually that nobody had run a marathon in every country in the world.
I'm not.
Exactly, and that's often the response, and I now know why, because it is so blooming difficult. The amount of logistics that we're
I can't even begin to imagine how difficult that was.
It was. I thought it was going to be difficult when planning it. I didn't even know how many countries there were at the beginning, so that was stepping stone number one. Understand that and then ascertain that, and then there's countries that came out and they're on this piece of paper that you go and find your initial list and then you investigate it further. And there's countries that I couldn't pronounce, I never even heard of them, didn't even know where they were, and then you start to learn more and more and more, and now I can pretty much name all the countries. I know all the cities, all the capitals, all the political areas, and it was just a huge education for me. And then you go through war zones, you go through areas of poverty and extreme deprivation, and I learned a lot about various different elements of travelling and endurance, and a lot about myself. And it was a trip of a lifetime, and I'm very, very grateful to have done it.
You'd be a great team partner in the pub quiz for those geography questions, wouldn't you?
I would be a very good team partner for the geography bit, but nothing else. that's what my friends, I'll be there for the geography bit and nothing else.
Wow. So that, and just go. I'm still thinking about the planning of that. But just before we go there, you mentioned during the MDS, and I've heard other interviews of yours. You said that you've got away with injuries in your life, and I know that's not the case in every challenge you've been on. So what happened in the MDS? Because I'm interested in that as well.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a problem in the MDS. To be honest, I went into the MDS far too confident, and I didn't give it the respect that it deserves. That's the honest truth. And I went into it hoping that I was going to finish top 20. I had trained what I thought to be huge amounts, and I did day one and day two, and I felt pretty strong, and I was not rushing it too much. I had brilliant tent mates, Kevin being one of them, and it was this amazing experience. But you're absolutely right. I've got away with a lot of injuries, but not in the MDS. I ended up not finishing the top 20. I ended up finishing, I think it was 338th, which wasn't horrendous, but I'm pretty pleased with it, really, considering what happened. And on the fourth day, the long day, about 1:30 in the morning, I had loads of blisters on my feet, and I was hobbling out of this medic tent, having had blisters and bits popped, and feeling pretty sorry for myself and not doing very well.
Yeah.
And my ankle, my calcaneum, which is an impact fracture if you were to fall off a building, feet first.
Yeah.
I just probably overtrained. Maybe I didn't have the right bone density or something, and my calcaneum fractured and broke. And I still had a good 40 miles left of the race to run, hobble. And I was told I would be taken out of the race because I couldn't continue. Unfortunately, some very nice French medics they found me some crutches. The only pair of crutches in the medic tent of all these 70 doctors that were volunteering for the race.
Right.
And I thought, well, obviously you wouldn't have crutches because it's a desert; they're going to be useless. And they were pretty useless, but they managed to keep me upright, and I fortunately managed to persuade them to let me carry on. And I kind of escaped the orthopedic surgeon there that was assessing me and wanting to write me off. And I hobbled back to my tent with these crutches and completed the last few days of the race on crutches. So 40 miles with a broken ankle. I didn't think was possible, but with the help of strong painkillers, tramadol, any painkillers I could find, I got myself to the end. But honestly, that was brutal. So I think you're absolutely right. That was the last time I had a real horrible injury during a trip.
So you were off your head on painkillers. I'm just picturing this.
Yeah.
On crutches in the desert. So was it? So I haven't done MDS. So I'm assuming the dunes were involved in the part that you were at. Were they?
Yeah. So running up, hobbling / crawling up big sand dunes. I mean, some of these sand dunes are bigger than buildings. Huge sand dunes.
Yeah.
And obviously it's very hot. And so you can't escape the sun. And with a broken ankle, I was absolutely in the hurt locker. I was in a lot of pain. And a very good friend of mine called Chris, he was there, who I met there actually, and he's now a good friend of mine. He was with me, and all he put up with was just my cursing and screaming. And I was such a rubbish. Looking back, I was this brilliant. I'm just going to get through it. There's no pain, but I was in a lot of pain. But I just did not want to give up because I went into the race knowing that it was going to be difficult.
Yeah.
People say it's one of the hardest races in the world, and so I thought, well, whatever I do, I've got to finish. And so when that happened, I thought, well, I don't have a choice. Even if I crawl, I will fight people off me to get me there. So no, I mean, sand dunes are half of the problem. It's just the escaping the heat. You want to find as much shade as you can, and there just isn't any.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a couple of operations, and just pottering around the house after you've had a knee op or something, your shoulders, your hands get blistered like your feet do on crutches. So you're going through the desert on crutches. It's
so many blisters on crutches on my hands. I actually, when you shake the Patrick Bauer, the founder of the race, you shake his hand at the end of the race and he gives you your medal when you cross the finish line, and he was horrified that you hurt my hands by shaking them because I had so many blisters. So no, it was one of those moments though. As soon as you've had one of those moments of this feels like rock bottom, you know that there's going to be worse situations, but it just gives you tremendous ability for the future. Like, I can't say that enough. There's so many people focused on the negatives, but right now, okay, I'm injured, but actually the positives are I'm going to finish it, and it's going to be more of a challenge, which is kind of cool. It's a good story to tell. So there's always positives.
So was this? So you said that you ran this with Kevin Webber. So was that before you and him had your chat that you said kind of changed your perspective on things, or was that after?
It was during, yeah. So Kev was, I think it was day. I can't remember what day it was. During the middle of the race. I mean, we were sharing a tent together, so obviously you have lots of conversations with each other throughout in the evenings and even on the plane beforehand. But he and I had a proper kind of heart to heart during the race, and that was it was during the race that we both had
Okay, so was that before you broke your ankle then, or was it while you were on the crutches? Or I'm just trying to understand where your motivation comes from, because it would have been easy for you, and it would have been completely acceptable for you to say, "Right, I'm done." So
no, true. I think honestly, I don't know. I think I have a lot of stubbornness in there. So the conversations I had with Kev was before my ankle. Before my ankle happened,
okay,
and I think there was definitely some of those things that Kev was saying to me were helpful. But there was a double amputee in the race that I think made it to day 4 because his stumps were so. He was an absolutely brilliant guy, and when you have the after event speeches and awards at the hotel once you finish, everybody was in tears, and it was such an emotional thing. But my perspective on stuff, similar to now, and I hope always, is that there's always somebody that's worse off. And having now seen the world, that opinion has been absolutely amplified, because there's, we talk about how many people coronavirus is killing now, and it's horrendous, don't get me wrong. But there's 2 million children under the age of 5 every year dying from starvation, because they haven't got enough food around the world. 2 million children under 5. And we have the antidote for that. We don't have to have some special vaccine. It's food, and we have enough of it to go around. And so when you think about that sort of stuff, and the amount of people in our daily lives that suffer with cancer, with disability, with inequality, and actually, you know what, just get on with it. And as everybody knows in the running community, kind of pain is temporary, and pride is forever, and the getting to the finish line is what you crave. So I think I was just stubborn, and I was also high on painkillers and adrenaline,
which always helps. Wow. Okay, so you did MDS, and then it was after that you decided that you were going to run in every country a marathon.
Yeah, that was it was a real pivotal moment, and I initially didn't decide I was just going to go run a marathon in every country. I kind of Googled all sorts of things. I wanted to do a trip involving a good portion of the world, maybe some of the. I looked at doing things in the polar caps. I looked at doing some mountain running, and I wanted to raise quite a bit of money for prostate cancer. We're trying to raise £250,000.
Yeah.
And I wasn't this name of anybody, I'm still not, anybody really knows. And so I needed something that was going to be a little bit longer in time in order to raise the awareness and have the amount of time. So it was quite a practical approach. I'm a very practical person.
Yeah.
So I had to think of something that was going to be big enough and in terms of duration, long enough to capture the attention of people and hopefully spread this message.
Yeah.
And it actually worked really well, because there was lots of opportunities around the world that I was, we did something like 140 live TV interviews in 140 different countries, and I was talking about prostate cancer, and I felt like what I set out to do, which was to spread the awareness and raise some cash, was actually working. I was having emails from people saying, "Oh, I've just gone and got myself checked, and I actually have prostate cancer." And so that was,
wow,
it was incredibly powerful. And so I decided to do that after meeting Kevin, and having, we met shortly before I left for the trip, and his diagnosis, by the way, was to potentially only live for as little as 2 years, and it took me 2 years to plan it. And so what was amazing is that not only was he there to see me off at the beginning, but he was also there hand in hand crossing the finish line with me in Athens, and he was running a marathon with me 5 years and 4 days after he was told he was only going to live for 2 more years.
That's brilliant.
And that's the power of one man's mind, just to go, you know what, I'm not giving up. And I've had very good family friends. My godfather as well died of cancer, not prostate cancer, died of cancer.
Yeah.
And his attitude was very much the opposite of Kev's, and I wish it hadn't been. It was one of giving up. And seeing Kev and so many others struggle through this sort of stuff, you ask about what gets you through things, and it's so easy now. You just think of that.
Yeah, it's I struggle talking about this one as well. I have a friend. I lost a friend last year, school friend.
Yeah.
Cancer. And 37. He was 37. 3 children. One's only 18 months old. But he
oh my gosh.
But he was. You'd have never known that he was unwell. He was. I mean, when we were young, he was the life and soul of the party. He was the Joker. He was exactly that, until he passed away. It's incredible, really.
It's so powerful that everybody, and I believe this very strongly, everybody has somebody in their life, just like you do, that you will think of, and without even hesitating, you instantly kind of your hairs on the back of your neck go up. You start to kind of well up a little bit. It makes you so instantly emotional, and I think that's what the impact was with Kevin, is that it was so powerful that I feel like I've been reborn, and he says the same. Is because of his diagnosis, he's almost given his second chance at life. And I hope that, I mean, many of your listeners are obviously runners, and they're already doing what they love, I hope. But we also have the opportunity to go that a little bit further, and whether it's Harry and Meghan's getting on TV and telling people to vote, which is in the corniest way possible, is that our voice is being used for good. We have that opportunity to do it ourselves, whether it's for our children or for ourselves or for our parents or for our friends. Do something that is for you, just go and, what do I want to do before I pop my clogs, before my time is up? What do I want to do? And go and do it. And we all have the ability, and that's what I've learned from seeing so many areas of poverty around the world, is so many people do not have that freedom. They are living hand to mouth. They are hunting for food and water to live, and we take that for granted. So everything else is a bonus, and so let's just try and use all of our time. So I feel very lucky to have had that message from Kevin, and now living in a genuinely more I suppose empowered way.
Yeah, nice. Like your words, thank you, Nick. I tell you what else I like as well, because I know you've mentioned a few already, is your stats on your website.
Yeah.
There's lots of them. Who was keeping tally of all these? Because it's
it was a good combination of people. So I had a good tally of it was very easy to keep track of flights. Passports were the visa guys. A company called Universal Visas in the UK. Really small company, really brilliant people. They kept all of that. My dad was incredibly pivotal in the flights. His sole responsibility, which was pushed upon him, by the way, rather than volunteered, was to get me from A to B to C to D to E, to get me from one country to the next, all the way through to the finish. And we originally planned that that he was going to take around, there's 196 countries, and we thought he was going to take around 220 flights to get me to each one, run a marathon, and then move on. It was about 3 a week. And with a few bits in there that went a little bit wrong, and ultimately it ended up with not 220 flights, but 455 flights, and that shows you how much went wrong. So to answer your question of who kept tally of all of them, there was a little bit of help from Strava and Garmin and Sunto and all the gadgets I was wearing to keep track of steps and calories and stuff, but most of it was just was writing stuff down as we went.
Yeah, brilliant. So for anyone listening, have a look at Nick's website, nickbutter.com, and under his Running the World, there's stats, and it's like I could talk to you about every one. 22 marathons with food poisoning. What? So you were doing three a week, was it, for 96 weeks? It says on your website. Is that right? Yeah. Wow. Okay. And like 20.
There's a few weeks in there that was only one or two because of flights and stuff, but it was roughly 3 a week.
Yeah, brilliant. I don't want to keep going on about the planning, but I like some, like with a UK passport, some countries I'd imagine it's a breeze to get into, but then others I'd imagine that some are really some you just really difficult to get into.
Almost impossible. Yeah, you've got and I put this in the book actually. We had to use a traffic light system on all of the countries. So we got all of the countries on a spreadsheet, and then we consulted with a number of security people about the safety of the countries. So we traffic lighted, amber, red, and green for the safety of the countries, and then we also put amber, red, and green for different the accessibility of the countries, and how easy it was to access and then also get out of the country. So you have places like France, very easy to get into. I mean, this is pre-COVID, remember?
Yes.
And then you then have countries like let's say America, which we can go to, but you have to go through a number of different forms and make sure that you've got your visas and your your visa's on, but it's not impossible. It's not difficult. You just got to get it done.
Yeah.
And then you get the next level of the unknown areas, which are the countries that you have to have visas on arrival. I think there was about 60% of my visas were visas on arrival, which means that you don't really know what's going to happen until you get there, and you don't know how much they're going to cost or if they're going to try and extort you, which happens a lot. And then you have the other end of the spectrum, which is places like Libya, Syria, Iran, Bhutan, where they have all sorts of special rules about whether or not you have certain medical certificates. You need an invite from the king or the prince or the palace. And then you also need some of them just simply refused my visas. There was a good couple of dozen places that just refused my visas for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But the hardest part of all of it wasn't actually the difficulty of accessing the visas. It was orchestrating them whilst mid-trip, because you can't just get all the visas before you leave. You have to do it during, because they're only valid. Some of them are only valid for 24 hours. And so organising that and then getting my passport in time to then use it and then get out and then get another passport for another place was difficult. We got through 9 passports.
Wow. So I'm just trying to imagine that. So each week you're running 3 marathons. You're traveling between each of them. And organise. So how many people did you have helping you? You mentioned you've pushed it on your dad a bit, but I hope you had more help than that.
Yeah, my mum and dad were brilliant. No, I had the first member of the team really was my assistant, which right at the beginning planning days was a girl called Ali, and then Ali moved that role onto another lady called Carla, and they managed my kind of assistance in my diary and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then towards the end, I actually met a guy 4 or 5 years prior to the trip. We were running the Silverstone Marathon together, and his name was Veton, and we were chatting. It was rainy day. We were standing in the hangar of in Silverstone half marathon.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm actually from Kosovo. If you ever come to Kosovo. And at the time I thought, well, that's unlikely, but yeah, sure, I'll take your details. And if I come to Kosovo, then I'll come running with you. And we didn't say a word to each other after that. We just, he was following me on social media.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I completely forgot about the occasion. And then 5 years after meeting him, he was there waiting for me in the airport in Kosovo, having got in touch with Carla at the time, saying, I want to help Nick. And go one step further, I later then found out that Veton used to work for the UN, for the United Nations, and had huge contacts everywhere, namely in Afghanistan, and used to work in Afghanistan in the embassies and in the compounds. And we were struggling to get access to the Afghanistan United Nations base, and we needed some contacts there that were going to help us and keep me safe for running in Kabul.
Yeah.
And long story short, I then randomly, out of the blue, asked him if he wanted to become a member of the team and to take over from Carla, who was stepping down as my assistant, because it's a long period of time. This is 2 years, this is a long stressful period for everybody involved.
Yeah.
And amazingly, this guy I met 5 years ago at Silverstone then became my assistant for the journey, and he was absolutely paramount in getting all of the accesses we did, and he had contacts everywhere. So it was, again, the power of just having a nice conversation with somebody for a couple of minutes was pretty special.
Amazing.
To answer your question, it ranged from about 5, maybe 8 people, all the way up to 19 people at one point. In the team, various psychologists, nutritionists, performance managers, coaches. But the core team was probably about 5 to 8 people that made the trip happen.
Amazing. That's amazing. So he'd actually, you'd met him, you'd followed each other on social media. He had saw that you were doing the challenge and got in touch to support that leg of it, which has then evolved into you working together.
Yeah,
wow.
It's honestly, there's a lot of people that don't like, or that cringe at people that speak to people on a plane or a train or a bus, and you just randomly say, hello, how are you? And you get chatting. But I'm a big advocate for it, because most of my friends and contacts are people that I've just randomly spoken to. Another classic example of that is this brilliant guy called Chris, who I met on social media, he was a brilliant photographer, and I said, look, I need a photographer to come out and take some pictures of me in the pool.
Yeah.
Will you come out and get some photos in the pool, because we've got some photographers coming out in different countries, but we need one for Nepal, and he was pretty well versed at photographing the mountains. Anyway, long story short, we had a brilliant time in the mountains. He took some video footage. He turned out to be this brilliant director, had a production company based in Fox Studios in Sydney, and he is now in the finishing stages of putting my documentary together with Netflix.
Wow.
So,
Brilliant.
Yeah, the journey, exactly. It's just
Brilliant.
story after story after story.
Yeah. Amazing. I mean, I'm looking at these stats and what, because I find that with the running community that it's close, isn't it? And there's some very generous people. I'm sure you've got more stories of people taking you in and helping you out. But you've also got a few on here: 3 marathons with a kidney infection, 2 muggins, 1 dog bite. I bet you there was some traveling. It's inevitable, really. That were there some hairy moments?
Yeah. There was lots of moments that happened that were pretty hairy, pretty scary, and sometimes genuinely fearful of if I was going to get through to the end of the day. There was all sorts of situations, whether it be close encounters with animals or just the natural elements. I was running through Hong Kong, and there's these huge thunderstorms, and there was claps of lightning more or less every other step. And it was such a big storm. There was nobody outside, and I really started to think, hang on a minute, I'm running for 4 or 5 hours. The lightning's going off every 2 minutes. Like, it's going to be dangerous. So there was, I was absolutely fine, of course. But you do have those moments where you don't feel fine, and there was that stress actually, which underlined the whole trip, because I was worried, and I had to be conscious of making sure that I wasn't getting injured or getting myself into silly situations. And when things happen like they did in Nigeria, when I was in Lagos, in the capital, and I was mugged at knife point and at gunpoint, it was a pretty violent, horrible thing to have happened, and yet I then realised I still had 2/3 of other African countries still to run that were similar in terms of political instability, and I thought, gosh, this is, have I just got away with it then? How many times can I continue getting away with it? And I was crossing the 2 closest capital cities in the world, Kinshasa and Brazzaville, the 2 capitals of the Congo countries, and separated by the Congolese River. And my mum messaged me in the morning and said, you got to be careful going over that river, and sent me an article of a few boats of people that have drowned in the river. It's only a small river. And I thought, right, okay, well, I don't have another way of getting across. I've got to take the boat. And, it's those moments where you think, am I doing something a little bit silly? And because I was on my own traveling for the majority of the trip, I mentioned my team, none of them were with me. So traveling on my own, you have to rely on your own decision making, and when you're tired and knackered and desperate, sometimes you don't always make the right decisions.
I mean, I could dig all day about this trip. It's there's some amazing stories, but where does did you have this kind of appetite for challenges when you were children? I know you spoke about the MDS and Kevin, but were you very sporty as a kid?
I would say I was, well, famously my old headmaster, a guy called Sir David Benson, who I'm still friends with now actually, but this was my middle school, and he was my headmaster, but also took me for PE. And he famously put in my school report, and I quote, "not a natural runner." And that was very much the case. I wasn't a natural runner. When I was very young, I actually I struggled to walk because my feet turned almost 90 degrees in. Very, very strange. Fortunately, they sorted themselves out. But my parents were genuinely worried that I was going to walk properly, let alone become a runner. So sport was something that I loved, because I wasn't particularly academic. I was dyslexic. I struggled with certain, reading and writing, and I wanted to do, to excel at sports. So I think that's why I focused on it a lot. If you ask me to kick a football, I will miss every time. I'm useless. But racket sports, other ball sports, I'm all right at. But I actually I got into skiing quite young. Because my parents both skied, and skiing became my kind of lifeblood. I wanted to be an Olympic skier. I wanted to to ski in the Olympics, and I wanted to represent my country. And ultimately, the long story short is that I wasn't quite good enough. I had a couple of injuries, and I also didn't put enough time and attention into it. And I was actually getting too old by the time that I realised I was loving it. I was too old, maybe peak skiing when you're 22, maybe.
Yeah.
And so, it was a young man's game, and I then had the voice of my dad telling me to get a real job rather than just be a skier. But I still had sport in my, I still wanted to do sport, and being British and not having snow easily around, I guess running was the easy equivalent. And I do quite like, I say I quite like running. I love running because it is so simple. It's just a pair of trainers, or you don't even have to have trainers really. Just one foot in front of the other, and you don't need anything else other than a bit of a strong mind.
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned that you finished that you're round the world marathons in Athens.
Yes,
that's quite a good choice.
It wasn't. Honestly, we weren't actually aiming for Athens at the beginning. We thought we were going to finish in July, and then things got, which obviously Athens is in November, and we got a little bit delayed, and then we realised that we had an opportunity to finish in Athens in November, and we thought, right, well, let's go for that date. And Athens being Athens, the birthplace of marathon, you can't not finish there really in hindsight.
Yeah.
And so we went for that date, and then as the weeks went on, we thought, are we going to make that? Is that? And before long, we had hundreds of people coming out and paid flights and hotels to come and see me at the finish. And so the pressure was mounting to get there for the end, but fortunately we made it.
Wow, okay, yeah, so people are booking, a couple of months before, and you've still got X amount of marathons to run, which could, any kind of problems could happen. Oh, right.
We had a lot of war zones at the end, and we really didn't know how close it was going to come. And I mean, I've said it a few times in interviews, but there were a few key moments in the last few weeks of the trip, like week 93, week 94, 2 weeks before the end, where we really didn't think we were going to finish because I was banned from some countries, visas weren't allowed, and what with the politics of global politics and not being allowed from one country to another if you've been somewhere else.
Yes.
That was starting to become a problem towards the end of the trip, so we had to be quite savvy with that. And fortunately, we made it. But yeah, the whole detail of that debacle is in the book.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that all detailed in the book? Because that must have been very tricky to navigate.
It was very tricky, and it's also actually quite difficult to write about because there's so much that went on. I think I could write a book just about the finish day, let alone the other 693 other days of the trip.
Yeah.
And I had a word count limit with the publishers Penguin, and they said, well, you can write. We ideally want about 100,000 words, but you can go over if you want 120,000. And I think I submitted just a little over 300,000.
Right.
And so they had a lot of work to do to edit it and cut it all back. So it's a big book still.
Yeah, great. And just remind me when that comes out.
That comes out exactly a year from the finish line. So the 11th of November this year. So it's really not that far away, about a month away. It will be, it's on pre-order now on Amazon and Waterstones and all sorts of different stores, but it will be on the shelves and in people's homes if they've already pre-ordered it by the 11th of November.
Brilliant. Wow. I look forward to that. So you are currently then, describe to me where you are.
I am on a hotel rooftop surrounded by some kind of grassy reeds and a lovely jacuzzi overlooking the city of Bologna in northern Italy. We've got another, I think it's something like 60 something days until Christmas. So we've got a few more days to recover here, heal up a little bit, and then try running again, and then run a marathon every day for as long as I can, and then do a few double marathons, probably 5 or 6 double marathons toward the end of the run, and then reach Sicily for Christmas, and then have a few days in a nice place in Sicily.
Very nice.
That's the plan. Yeah.
Very nice. I love how you just drop in some double marathons toward the end when you.
Well, no, with this injury, that wasn't the idea. But with this injury, I've got to make up the mileage. So I don't have a choice.
Yeah. Okay. So I actually on the UK Run Chat Hour last night, I put out that we were going to interview you today, and we've had half a dozen or so questions I'm going to quickly fire at you before, but one of them from Jill Dudds. She asked, "What are you most looking forward to doing on day 101?"
Day 101, yeah. I think it's Christmas dinner. Day 101 is Christmas Day.
Oh right, okay.
And so, unfortunately, though, Christmas dinner won't be a British Christmas dinner because we're obviously in Sicily. So
Yeah.
I think it's going to resemble lasagna,
Oh, right.
which is better than nothing. But no, it's strange really because I don't know what I'm going to feel like on that day. I hope I'm just going to be able to sit like I am now, actually, just and relax and enjoy the day. But food is going to be the top of my list.
Food. Well, food got mentioned in another question. Somebody asked, "How are you? What are you eating each night?" And I suppose that came back into one of my thoughts about planning. But did you know where you're ending up each night on this current challenge? Do you?
On this current challenge?
Yeah.
No, we had. So we got. I put 100 rows of a spreadsheet together, and 26.2 miles in each day, and then you roughly have a look at the map. And I think we had about something like 15 points, 15 days where we knew almost like stages or milestones that we knew we had to reach in order to get to the end.
Yeah.
But Italy in its length is only about 1,000 miles, and so I'm obviously doing 2,600. So we knew we were zigzagging. We wanted to do all of the good bits, and so rather than just run straight down the middle quickly. So we had a rough idea, but it's quite nice because if I get better again now, heal up, and then we run to Pisa, for example, which is our next big stop on the west coast. I'm going to be able to have a good 2 or 3 days running around Pisa, a marathon a day, and having somewhere as a base.
Yes.
But in terms of food, obviously pizza and pasta is high up there. But I'm learning more and more that I'm going to need some proper nutrition. Teamed up with Morton for some nutrition, and also Resilient Nutrition.
Yep.
Who do really good. They have an energize and rebuild product, which is a product to give you a bit of energy in the morning, but also make sure your legs are repairing, so there's some fats and some protein in there. But they also do another sachet for the evening, where I don't want the energy, but I need to rebuild. And so they have lots of calming supplements in there, so I can sleep well.
Yeah.
So I would say I rely about 40% of my intake on those kind of decent sports supplements, and the other is just frankly just junk, whatever I could get.
Yeah. That was one of the questions from Samantha, actually. What's your recovery and recharge routine so you get up the next day and do another marathon? So that kind of fits in there, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it fits in there. I think the only other thing I do is have this tool called the Sidekick tool, which is it's like a really heavy metal. It's a scraping device for muscles.
Yeah.
And any knots or anything that gets a little bit tight, which I don't often have a lot of them because I'm running so slowly. But anything that does get a bit tight, I just kind of massage that out. And the only thing that I think shocks people with my routine is that I go to bed at 7 p.m. most nights.
Yeah.
Because I'm up at 5, and I mean that's if we stick to the schedule. Sleep is so underrated in sport, and I'm a big advocate for the more sleep you get, the better.
Yeah.
So that's a big one.
Yeah, early nights it is. At Iron Toffee, no, this is Dave. He's a bit left field. He wants to know if you've seen the Duck song on YouTube. Nothing to do with your challenge.
I haven't seen that.
No, mate. I'll ask him to tweet it to you.
Send that to me.
And we had a couple of people asking how many pairs of running shoes do you go through in that kind of challenge.
Oh yeah.
How many did you go through running the world? Actually, do you know that one?
Yeah, I do know that one. The answer I got through it's not as many as you think. 22 pairs. But of those 22, I actually only wore 15 out to the point that they were like getting hubbles in, which I know isn't what you're supposed to do. But having access to the right shoes and stuff. So I had 15 pairs, but the remainder, I think 7 or 8 of those pairs, of the 22 pairs, were either stolen or lost, or like soaked because I put them on a boat somewhere and they just got drenched. I did actually have, which is quite funny, and I talk about this in my theatre tour that's starting again next year. Is is I had 2 pairs of my shoes that were eaten by pigs. 2 completely separate countries. But I left my shoes outside to dry. It was once was in the Caribbean and once was in Africa. And the wild pigs just came and ate my shoes. They obviously thought it was some form of cheese, I guess. I don't know. But I lost a couple of pairs to some pigs.
Brilliant.
Well, the answer how many trainers I get through this trip is I don't know yet. But generally speaking, I'm changing them every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Because I've learned from my shin injury, I'm going to need to change them a little bit more often.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean about wearing them out, though. I like my running shoes when they're worn. They feel, it's like they moulded to your feet, isn't it? It's not.
Yeah, exactly. They're quite difficult to let go of, and it's apprehensive to get a new pair on. Yeah.
Cool. Nick, just remind us where people can follow you, and I'd encourage people to follow you on Instagram. I enjoy your photography, and you put all sorts of stats up each day, and that, don't you, as well? It's good to follow, but just remind us.
Thanks. Yeah, we have all sorts of stats and my body fat and how I'm struggling, what I'm doing. But the best way to follow me is on Instagram, which is Nick Butter Run.
Yep.
Nick Butter Run. Or the website, which is nickbutter.com, like you said, has all of the links from past stuff, future stuff, the book. And if you just Google Nick Butter or Running the World, you'll see all of the stuff that we're up to. And I will just plug the theatre tour next year, which has obviously been postponed from this year. And if anybody wants to come and hear some stories firsthand in a theatre, it's a couple of hours, 2.5 hour sets where I show some videos, some photos, and some stories which I've not told yet. And the final one is Strava, of course. So Strava, on Strava, my name is Nick Butter Running World, and you can see all of my slow plodding runs and where I am and what we're up to. And on the website is the tracker, so you can see exactly where we are now. Every 30 seconds that updates. So if you do want to come and find me and run with me, then drop me a message and so let's run.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, do have a look at the website, everyone. The Running the World stats I found very interesting. There's plenty of them. Yeah. Well, thanks, Nick. It's been great to chat. I hope that you heal quickly.
Thank you. Yeah.
The next couple of days, enjoy your rest, and
we'll be back on the road before you know it. No, thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and it's an honour. I've been a big fan of your run chat for a long time, so thank you.
Cheers, Nick. Thank you, mate.